Can you share with so many units what your monthly take home is after paying off all the debt? Like, what's the net profit every month?
So after payrolls like Molly, ID, all that kind of stuff,
right.
You're probably double six figures, so close to 200,000
a month.
Yeah.
And what does that equate to in terms of a dollar amount of real estate?
So the total amount of money, the total amount of real estate that we own is somewhere around 300 million. But again,
but a lot of those are paying down.
A lot of the money that's coming in is not cash flow to me. A lot of that money that's coming in is paying down the debt, right? Because I have payments I'm paying to sellers. Now we're bringing in a lot of money, but those payments that come in, I'm then paying my sellers who are my bank, right? And then my net cash flow is completely different than what I actually bring in.
For sure.
Right.
Do you do commercial at all? Or you stay away from that?
I don't know commercial very well. So right now I have a deal in Carson City, which is near Reno, I think. So I have a deal in Carson City that is a seller finance storage unit. And I'm like, okay, I could do that. I don't have anything in Carson City. That's a problem, is that determining and turning down why I won't buy in certain areas. Right now I'm at a point where I have enough real estate in 15 different markets that if it comes to me outside of that market, I'm just wholesaling it. But I have a storage unit that came to me this morning, Carson City, and I go, oh, it's seller finance, 10% down, seller finance, storage unit. I don't really have tenants that I'm dealing with, like toilets and trash and all that kind of stuff. I will probably buy that deal, but it will be my first storage unit deal.
And what's the return on that?
Net income per year, 60,000. So after you pay the seller off, after you pay the taxes and insurance, the net income would be $60,000 is what he's equating. Okay. So, I mean, one storage unit on seller finance is 60 grand a month or 60 grand a year. For most people, they could probably have their wife or themselves probably quit their job and just go full-time real estate with that 60 grand. That's on one deal.
Yeah. Now, does that include management on that?
Yeah, 8% management on that is what he assumes in his P&L, yeah.
Okay. Is that realistic for a storage center?
I think so.
Don't they usually require that someone like be on site?
I think it's a smaller one. So the ones that are bigger and they have like RV storage and stuff like that. I don't know. Sounds like I know a lot, but I actually don't know a lot. I know enough about RV storage facilities because as a contractor, I used to build them for people, but I've never owned one. So I know what happens. I know the mom and pop ones that are like 100 units or smaller typically don't have an on-site manager. The ones that have more than that do, or the ones that have RV storage where somebody has to pull in and back in. A lot of times they need somebody to make sure people aren't backing into people's boats and stuff like that. But I just have stayed in my lane I stayed in my lane for a long time on single family. I was afraid of multifamily. But now that I understand multifamily, I'm like, wow, this is actually a lot easier than single family once you have the credibility and the resources to manage the properties.
Sure. Why do you invest in the areas that you do?
Part of the reasons I did is because that's where my deals were coming from.
Okay.
Like Atlanta, the first deal I bought in Atlanta, I flew out there and I was speaking, and somebody that I was speaking in the audience was like, I have a deal. So I left, I went to the property, I go, okay, I'll buy the deal. And now that I own a property in Atlanta, and I knew that it's an appreciating market, I started buying more deals in Atlanta. So wherever I got a deal in my first year or 2 years, and I kind of set these strongholds, like politically, I wanted to be in areas that were landlord friendly, and I wanted to be in areas that had a population growth of at least 0.08% a year. Sorry, 0.8%. So just under 1% a year. And if they had population growth and good politics, I'll buy there. Now I'm at a point where I don't need more markets. I just want more properties in those markets. So I say no to everything else.
Got it.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, I was doing the numbers in my head. So if let's say the longest loans that you have on any of your properties is 50 years, then wouldn't that make that after 50 years has lapsed and you don't change anything, you'd have $300 million, right? Technically, in cash.
Way more than that.
Well,
because let's say
the assets, right? Well, sure.
Let's say they don't
0% appreciation.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, 300 million.
300 million. But then you're making $200,000 a month, which is $2.5 million a year. About if you times that by 50, that is not 300 million. So you're going to continue selling onto the properties early, assuming that.
I don't think what I'll probably do, and I'm newer, right? I'm in this part of the business less than 10 years. So I don't know what the next 10 years looks like. And I know that when you have kids, things change. When you get married, things change. When you decide, hey, I'm 40 years old, things change, right? So before you moved to Vegas, you lived a different lifestyle than you live today. You made different decisions than you did today. I don't know what tomorrow holds. All I know right now is that I want to continue to control and own more real estate. And my goal now is I look at my C-suite. So my C-suite, like CFO, CEO, COO, all the people that are on my team, I look at them and I go, how do I make you guys worth $20 million? And so I have to turn around and buy enough real estate that justifies them becoming worth that. That's my goal now. And sometimes you're going to switch out assets. Like we had a 20 unit deal that we bought a couple of years ago that we went through the inspection, everything was fine. And then a couple of years later, we had a sewage backup and we found out that like 5 years prior, they didn't literally duct tape, but they basically duct taped the sewer back together. We didn't catch it. And we had to go in and dump $300,000 into the property. And I was like, what else do we not know about this property? And I offloaded the property. I sold it. So in those situations, I'll offload a property, but now I've got a 1031 exchange that cash that I have in that property into another asset. So I prefer not to be in that situation, right? You probably, as an agent, you ran into investors that would go, I'm selling this asset, but now I have a timeline. I have to roll that money into another asset or else I get hit with taxes. Mm-hmm. That's another great thing about creative finance. Creative finance, you can do a delayed 1031 exchange. The seller, let's say a seller sells the property to me, his payments that I paid to him can actually be a 1031 exchange over 30 years. Isn't that freaking cool?
How is that? How does that work?
It has to go through an exchange intermediary, so a licensed person that does the 1031 stuff, and it bypasses all the regulation for the 1031 in a cash transaction. In a creative transaction, the 1031 can be delayed over whatever, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years.
But then that would mean he would eventually have to buy.
Yeah.
He would have to do something with it.
So you're saying, let's just say sell a building for $10 million. Mm-hmm. And your agreement is I'll pay you $1 million a year for 10 years.
Yeah.
So that $1 million a year, what, goes into an account?
No, he does have to identify an asset.
Okay.
So it has to go towards an asset. He can't just receive the money. It has to go to an asset he's identified, but those payments can be justified towards his 1031, even 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years down the road. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So
but just not closing on that second property.
He's already closed on it.
Okay.
He just had to go and get debt on it. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So he goes and gets a loan, he does whatever, but my payments to him can be identified as payments towards that property. That's where that money goes, and that will satisfy the 1031.
Okay.
So he still identifies the property the same way you would identify a property in a regular 1031, but he doesn't have to have all the money to put into that deal as of today. He can say, hey, 1031 intermediary, the person that's licensed to do all this stuff, these payments are going to come to me for the next 20, 30 years or whatever it is. I want those payments to be attributed to this property that I've already identified.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. There's all sorts of really cool things you can do.
Okay.